Welcome back to Hot Flashes and Cool Topics, everybody. Today we're talking to Dr. Julianne Arena, and she is an OBGYN. She has the Center for Personalized Medicine called Waves of Awakening in Plymouth, Massachusetts, one of my favorite places. And we are excited to have a conversation with Dr. Arena today about kind of having a toolkit for perimenopause and menopause. There's the traditional medicine, but there's also the functional and integrative medicine that is becoming more kind of more trending for women because we actually hear about it more than we ever did. So welcome to the show, Dr. Arena.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, we're excited to speak with you. And I thought a good place to start would kind of be talking about your own transition from being a traditional OBGYN into educating yourself on the other paths around menopause.
Sure, absolutely. So yes, I went the traditional medical route and practicing OBGYN for probably, 15 years, delivering thousands of babies, doing surgery, really loving what I did. And in 2016, I went to a conference on integrative medicine and women's health. And it was there that I really had my aha moment or my own awakening, because I was learning about so many things for women that you don't learn in traditional medical school. I was learning all about the thyroid. I was learning all about what we call the gut microbiome and probiotics and, so many different things, so many more tools in the toolbox, if you will. And so I would go home or I'd go back to my hotel room every night. And I went with my colleague who was an acupuncturist. And I was like, we got to bring this. We got to bring this to our practice. And we need to grow another branch of the tree. Like, yes, we need conventional medicine. It saves lives, but we need this whole other branch. Right. And so I went back to my partners and I said, we need to do this. And because I'm kind of a nerd, I had to go back and do a fellowship and get more education in it. And I really tried in that traditional model to do that. But as you know, and we're familiar with, the traditional model is about volume. And, I was seeing 30 patients a day and for maybe 15 minutes if I was lucky. And what I really needed to do is have more of a conversation with my patients, right? Ask them more questions about their sleep and their poop and their hormones, which you can't really do in a traditional 15-minute window. So, I would do that and I'd say, okay, let's come back and have a follow-up appointment and we'll dive a little deeper. And I will always remember a particular patient, we'll call her Sue. Sue came back and she said, you know what, Dr. Arena, after that first visit, I went to my car and I cried because you were the first doctor that ever asked me these kinds of questions. So I still get choked up and chills when I talk about it, because I thought, okay, I really need to do this. And I really tried to do it in my practice. And my partners were not on board because they didn't really understand it, right? So I took a giant leap of faith. And after 15 years in this practice and running it and being a partner, handed in my resignation. And I said, I have to go. And I didn't have a place to go, but I knew I needed to practice this new type of, different type of medicine. So I worked in a practice for a couple of years, an integrative practice, to get my feet wet. And then that practice decided to shut its doors. And I thought, okay, the universe is talking to me. This is my time. And so I opened with a colleague, our practice called Waves of Awakening, Center for Personalized Medicine, because I really want others to have the same awakening I did, to really, understand that there's more out there for our health, for women, more tools in the toolbox. And so we did that in February of 2020, before, 3 weeks before the world shut down, but navigated the world of telehealth. And really during COVID too, I became even more and more interested in sort of perimenopause, menopause, and female sexual health and wellness. You couldn't go to conferences at that time, but I was listening to a lot of conferences. And I thought, man, nobody talks about this. And I'm a GYN. If a GYN's not talking about it, who's going to talk about it? Right. So I sort of took on my next mission. Okay, I'm going to talk to every woman, no matter the age, who's coming through the door about this, because we have to start to have that conversation.
That's, you know, that is so, it's taken me through what you were saying, is taking me through kind of my first visit to a gynecologist up until where I am now, and
Mhm.
how you probably as a patient felt, or I felt, I didn't want to say things to my doctor. I didn't feel comfortable saying certain things to my doctor. But now, as I age, I am more comfortable asking these questions to a doctor. But do you also find that in your education, and I know I've heard this from other doctors, that the training just wasn't there?
Right.
Is that something you find or have
Yeah,
found?
we're really trained in what are your symptoms? Here's your diagnosis. Here's your pill for your ill. Right. And so, right. But in sort of integrative functional medicine, it's really about root cause. So you have to step back from that. And how did I get there? Right. And we're not trained that way. We're trained to on that hamster wheel, if you will, see as many patients as you can in the shortest amount of time, driven by, insurance and all of that. So we don't do a good job at that root cause medicine.
What do you find are some of the biggest things that traditional medicine is missing for women who are going through perimenopause and menopause?
Oh boy, that's the
Loaded
classic.
question.
Whew, you're just getting older. This is what happens. Or your hormones, well, there's really nothing we can do about that. Yeah, they're changing. I had a patient recently come to me and she said, I asked my doctor, will you test my hormones? And they said, well, no, because they change all the time. Well, yeah, but you can still look at them, you can still test them, you can still evaluate. So definitely that we're just getting older mentality, and that makes me nuts. We do age, our nutrients and our hormones decline, but we can look at those, we can test them, we can support them in a very safe way, not super physiologically, but very safely, so that you can lead an optimal life.
Yeah, I find that the symptoms, like for example, I've said this before, when I was in perimenopause, I didn't know what perimenopause was. I didn't know what night sweats were. I was having them. I didn't know there was a name for them. And do you feel like patients, when they come to you, like you said, the one that went out in her car and just started crying because finally somebody was listening to her? What are some different things out there? What happens if they're scared of hormones, or they've been told they can't take hormones, or what would be a step that would happen with a patient that came to you in perimenopause?
I'm a stickler and huge about education, right? So, what are you going through? Let's define what perimenopause is. What are your symptoms? I've learned certainly that any symptom someone lists could be perimenopausal, right? Not, oh, you don't fit into this, cookie cutter box. So anything, yes. And then we test, right? And we see what's going on, routinely. In perimenopause can be 10 to 15 years before we stop our periods. Estrogen's going up and down, progesterone's dropping. Estrogen and progesterone are really dance partners. They want to play well together, right? So when they're imbalanced, all sorts of symptoms can happen. So we look at that and address it to the individual.
Besides hormones, there are other factors at play. So, what do you test for to see what else is kind of mixing in with it?
Yes, I would say over 90% of the women that come through my door, we talk about nutrition and the gut, because happy gut, happier hormones, happy gut, happy brain, happy gut, happy immune system. And over 70% of our immune system lies our GI tract, right? We're coming out of hopefully a pandemic where I've been screaming from the rooftops, we have to support our immune system. So happy gut, happy immune system, right? So we talk about all of that. I also talk about what I call foundational nutrients that, again, our routine provider may not be checking for. What are those? Things like magnesium and zinc and vitamin D and B12. if there's cracks and holes in the foundation, how strong is the house going to be, right? We need to fill in those cracks and holes in the foundation. So we're looking at that as well.
Mhm. And I know that I've listened to on your website, there was another podcast that you were on. I was listening to that, and you were talking about, supplements. And I do know that on your website as well, that there is a way to get that. But you also mentioned how you have to really be careful about where your supplements come from. Can you share some of that with us?
Yes, there's been a fair amount of studies and research where they're pulling nutrients and supplements from, brand name big store places, and they might not have what they say they have in them, or a lot of fillers, or how they're stored. So I tell people, I love Target and I love Amazon, but not for my nutrients and supplements, because I want to know that they are third-party tested, GMP, which is good manufacturing, process. I want to know that they're gluten-free, dairy-free, soy-free, and that I'm going to get the same thing the next time I get that bottle.
So
Yeah.
what would you recommend for people when they're looking for supplements? What should they avoid and what should they look for besides being those, because a lot of people don't know. If they go online, they're like, well, this looks good to me.
Right. It's everywhere, right? It's on Instagram, So, if you're in an area, a local, smaller health food store, usually they have done their research and they have some good quality places. Again, there are online companies, Full Script and Whole Script. I have those links on my website, which anyone has access to, but I just know that you're getting what you're getting. And I know where it's been manufactured, and I know I can trust it, because you can be taking something and you're not getting better. Well, how do you know? Is it that? Are you really getting what you're supposed to be getting?
And what about the nutrients you get in food? Should the supplements just be partial, and should you be trying to get most of your nutrients from food?
Yes. I say food is medicine, right? Or food can be poison. Having said that, even if we eat the cleanest, most organic diet, our soil doesn't have the nutrients in it. It's not as nutrient dense as it was in our grandparents and beyond. So even if you're eating clean, sometimes depending on someone's labs, I say a good quality multivitamin is just going to give you a little smattering of what you're not getting. One of my favorite nutrients is magnesium. Magnesium, because it's involved in over 400 enzyme reactions in our body, and we chew it up with stress. So I say, get it in your foods. Pumpkin seeds are a great source of magnesium. Get it in an Epsom salt bath. There is that Mag Calm out there, which is that powdered drink that's really good. So there are lots of ways. It isn't always more is better in the supplement world, right? Because I think that's a slippery slope as well. You're just substituting more pills. So can we get it from our food and nutrition? That would be optimal.
What are some of the foods that you recommend that are usually pretty good for everyone? What are some that you recommend?
I'm a big fan of, whole food, plant-based, not necessarily 100%. I know I eat meat. I need meat. My body craves it. It's not for everybody, but really sort of real food, right? Not processed. And I am a fan sort of the long-standing Mediterranean diet, right? If you think about the people in the blue zones, right, around the world, they are eating from the earth, right? Fruits, vegetables, lean meats and proteins, maybe grains if they work for them, but they're also cleaner grains and not, GMO grains. So, right, fish, maybe some healthy dairy if that works, but that doesn't work for everybody.
We
Right.
had Dan Buettner on the show from the Blue
Yes.
Zones, and it was
Yeah.
a really interesting conversation.
Fascinating, right?
Mhm. It
Yes.
really is.
He really
Yeah.
does. He just has so much information that he shared. When you talk about magnesium, I just wanted to clarify which type of magnesium you're talking about, because there's so many different varieties.
Question, right? So depending on what someone's needs are. So I'm a stickler about a few things. I'm a stickler about sleep and poop. Okay, so if someone is not pooping every day, we've got work to do because that's how we get rid of our toxins. So if someone is not pooping, magnesium citrate is a wonderful option. If everything is good and I just want some magnesium that's well absorbed, magnesium glycinate is great. If I'm more on the anxious side, then I like magnesium taurate because taurine is a calming amino acid. So there's lots of different ones out there. Those are my sort of 3 go-tos depending on what someone's needs are.
So you're talking about the importance of pooping. and
I talk about poop all the time.
Which
And
our listeners know has been,
Yeah.
I was born constipated. So there's just, I'm
But
always
there-
listening to this
and then there's
information.
the constipation to the really loose stools to the, what's a good old happy,
Medium?
good old nice happy poop.
Right? I know this is a listening podcast, but here I have my
Oh,
my
I've seen
picture.
that on
Oh.
Pinterest. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, ideally, you're having, 1 to 2, 1 to 3 bowel movements a day. I've definitely learned over the years not to say, "Oh, do you have regular bowel movements?" Because people say, "Yeah," and that's twice a week for people. So now I say, "How often do you have a bowel
Okay.
movement?" And then I really get into it. Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah.
What about stress? We kind of touched on it before, but how does stress affect our perimenopause menopause journey?
Right. So stress is what over 90% of the reasons that someone walks into a doctor's office. So stress is really from our hormone cortisol, right? You're familiar with that. Cortisol is that hormone that comes from our adrenal glands. It's our fight or flight hormone. It makes us the best versions of ourselves. But, I often work with superwomen with 50,000 balls in the air. So we're not in fight or flight just to run from the saber-tooth tiger and run up a tree. We are in fight or flight, if not 24/7, many more hours in the day than the body is designed. Okay. So I'm going to talk about an analogy and how that affects how stress and cortisol affects us. I talk about something you might have heard in my other podcast called the hormone symphony. Okay. If you picture your symphony up on stage, you have the wind, you have the string, you have the percussion. They're all playing well together to make this beautiful music. Well, if we think of our bodies like that in a hormone symphony, yes, you have your estrogen, your progesterone, your testosterone, but you also have glucose and insulin. So we have to talk about our gut and foods and all of that. We have to talk about our thyroid gland in our neck, and we have to talk about cortisol. So if they're all up on stage together and cortisol's running really fast and really loud, then that whole symphony is not really a symphony, it's a garage band. So to your point, right, stress is affecting our thyroid, it's affecting glucose and insulin, because if our body thinks we're running from that saber-tooth tiger, we got to pump out more glucose, we got to make more insulin, we're becoming pre-diabetic, right? It's affecting our sex steroid hormones. It's affecting our gut. It pokes holes in our gut lining. Then we get, gut issues and, a leaky gut or intestinal permeability. So stress, right? It's so multifactorial in how it plays in people.
And I mean, I guess nutrition, what do you tell someone that is under stress? I mean, even someone like you that has opened a clinic during a pandemic, and I can imagine the stress involved. So I guess nutrition is a big thing.
Nutrition is key, right? I would say that managing stress is a work in progress for all of us, right? Even those of us that teach it need to practice it, because we're really good at 50,000 balls in the air. And we've sort of created a culture and a reward system of, I'm a multitasker. I can get all these things done. Look at me, win-win, when in reality, especially the older we get in perimenopause and menopause, that symphony is saying, right? And we can't push it like we used to push it in our 20s and 30s. We get frustrated and annoyed with ourselves, right? And then we go out seeking the answers.
So a patient will walk in and kind of hint around that they're having some perimenopausal symptoms, even if they don't realize that they're having those symptoms, that means they're in perimenopause. You test for the thyroid. You were saying that you'll test their insulin levels, sugar levels. You'll test the hormone levels. What else do you test for?
I see where their nutrition is at and see where their gut is at. So I look at foundational nutrients, can do that in blood, right? Thyroid you can do in blood, maybe cholesterol, those sorts of things. What is their nutritional or gut status? And then I will look at their hormones and I will look at their 4-point salivary cortisol, because you really want to see what your cortisol is doing throughout the day, right? It has a circadian rhythm. It peaks in the morning and it ideally should come down and be at its lowest at bedtime so that our own melatonin that we make can kick in and we can sleep. What I see, women start the day out of the gate, like way above normal. Our bodies are amazing, trying to come down into normal range. Oh my God, at 2:00, if I don't have a Starbucks, or a coffee, I'm going to kill somebody, because that's our sort of wired and tired time. The tank is empty, but I'm still running from that tiger. And then at night, when we should be low, is sometimes that's our only downtime, right? So maybe I'm getting some stuff done or some laundry, or maybe I'm going to binge watch Netflix because I'm super tired, or I'm going to have my glass of wine. All of those things, though we think that they are calming and restorative, right? They are spiking that cortisol, and there goes our disrupted sleep, which we all in perimenopause and menopause know that that's a super joy, right?
That is
What-
so interesting. Yeah, I didn't think about that part of it, about how it interrupts
Right. And to
sleep.
follow up with the sleep, what do you suggest women do then? Do you turn the TV off, turn the phone off, which I'm
Right,
sure
sleep
the
improves,
response
my
is
friend.
great, right?
So, right, sleep hygiene, I talk about a lot, and it's setting the stage for sleep. What does that mean? An hour or two before your head hits the pillow, set the stage, dim the lights, ready? Get off the phone, the TV, the computer, because that blue light is stimulating. Read a book. Maybe take an Epsom salt bath, which is magnesium and it's detoxifying. Put some lavender essential oil in there, right? So that when your head hits the pillow, you've set the stage. I tell people, if you've had, children or you babysat, think about how you put those babies down. The lights are off, the music is on, you've given them a bath, you're rubbing their back, so they drift off into sleep. We watch, Game of Thrones, shut it off, put our head down, and expect our brains to shut down, right?
Good point.
Yeah, so funny. I just wish somebody'd rub my back.
I was
Right?
thinking
Tell
the
my
same thing.
husband
I'm
that.
like, could we get our husbands to do
John
that?
needs to rub my back. Yeah.
Are you listening, John? You've had a direct request. When I checked out your website, there were a couple of interesting things on there that I wanted to ask you about. First is the
Sure.
Oshot. Can we start with that? What is it and how does it help women?
Yes. So I love the Oshot. So it is, we use what's called PRP, which is platelet rich plasma. So it's part of our blood that's filled with growth factors and stem cells. So you get blood drawn from your arm, and then we spin it down with a centrifuge to get these growth factors and stem cells. Now, PRP is used all the time in the sports industry because it's great for wound healing. So I'm sure, people in the NFL, shoulders, knees, because it's wound healing, get you recovering faster. So it's used in the sports industry. It's used in the world of aesthetics because of growth factors and stem cells, face. It's used in hair restoration. In the GYN world, it's called the Oshot, or the orgasm shot, because we place those growth factors and stem cells by the clitoris and in the vagina for many different reasons, for sexual benefit, so improved sexual relations, maybe orgasm, and also in the vagina to help the bladder, right? Because many times as we're going through perimenopause and menopause, there may be bladder issues to address, frequency, urgency, gotta go, all of that. So the Oshot focuses on that. So sexual health benefits as well as bladder benefits.
So would it also help with UTIs, or I didn't know about that.
It potentially can, I talk about it's a multi-layered approach when there's things going on with the vagina, and things going on with libido, right? I talk about libido all the time And really it's a multi-layered approach, because for years I was searching for that magic pill, just like everybody else, not just for myself and my patients and this and that, but what is the solution? Because so many women come in and they say, you know what, like, I have no libido, I feel bad for my partner, I'm exhausted, all of that. And so it really starts with, how do I feel about myself, right? Because if I'm not feeling good, I don't want to share, right? What's going on with my vagina? Is it dry? Does it hurt? Did I have babies in their scar tissue, right? Where is my estrogen in my vagina? Because we lose that. Then libido is also about my partner. Do I like my partner in this moment in time? Right? Did I sleep last night? What's on my sticky note to-do list? And who's in the house? Because COVID brought so many, young adults home. So it's really multifactorial. So, Oshot is part of that. I can talk about other modalities. We do Cliovana is part of that. Optimizing the vagina, depending on what's going on. Is that replacing estrogen? Is that pelvic floor physical therapy? Is it, therapy because there's been trauma? Depending on what the individual need is.
I just want to ask if the Oshot hurt. That was like,
Yeah.
Right? Great question. So I don't, I practice what I preach, and I always test out everything. So no, we have a really good numbing protocol. So, by the time the needle goes in, you feel it, but you're not like, oh my God, there's a needle going in my clitoris and my vagina.
Right. Just checking.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good question, Colleen. But yeah, have you found, I know that was probably another thing when I was younger. If I went to my gynecologist, it's like I was embarrassed to talk about sexual health. Have you found that to be an issue with women? And as the older I get, I feel like there's less of a taboo, and I feel more comfortable talking to my doctor about it. But have you found that with your patients?
I think it's getting better. There's more out there. There's a sort of this joke in medicine. It's like the doorknob question. Like, you think you've finished your visit and you're about to put your hand on the doorknob, and a woman says, I have one more question. And that is like an enormous question that they finally got up the courage to ask you. And a lot of times it can be about, libido or sexual issues. So yeah. But then I've also made it my mission to ask everybody. And I say, I say, go home, blame me, say, oh my God, Dr. Arena was talking all about sex today. She gave me these lubricant samples, and to start that conversation, chances are the ears will be perked up, right? And they'll be interested, but use me, blame me as the conversation starter.
Oh, I love that.
Bridget, John, are you listening?
But I do love it that you're just taking on that. You're being proactive about it and just getting all those questions that people are too embarrassed to ask out.
Oh yeah, I have in my office here. This is my little clitoris model, and I have my little samples of my lubrication that I give people. Oh yeah, I'm a very hands-on visual
And
person.
I think that's great. I think it's great.
And it makes people more comfortable, because then you're kind of explaining, here's a clitoris you don't have to worry about. It makes it more, I don't know, scientific maybe is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
You mentioned Cliovana. What is that?
So that is another technology that's non-invasive, so different than the Oshot. So there's no needles, no numbing, anything like that. That technology uses sound waves to improve blood flow and nerve endings to the area, to the clitoral area. So if you think about when we age, blood flow decreases down there, nerve endings decreases. So this is sound wave technology that is external to the clitoral and vulvar area that gets, the entire clitoris. So I know the listeners can't hear, but the clitoris is usually thought of just as a nub, and it's not. It actually has arms and legs. So when we do this treatment, this sound wave treatment, it goes all along the vulvar area. So we hit the clitoris and get all of it. It is non-invasive and really improves blood flow to nerve endings to the area. So increased frequency and intensity of orgasm, I've seen huge improvements in lubrication because that's an issue as we age, right? And it's a nice non-hormonal option for those that can't or choose not to use hormones. And I've actually seen anecdotally some bladder improvement too. So the benefit of that is non-invasive. It's 4 short 10-minute treatments in the office, twice a week for 2 weeks, no downtime, and off you go. So that's been a wonderful addition too. Again, if you're not happy with yourself and your partner and all of that, you need to work on the whole picture.
So with the Oshot, is there any downtime with that?
Nope. Again, probably the longest part is sort of the processing of your blood and the centrifuge, but no, I mean, you put it in, within 15 minutes, out the door, back to work.
Wow.
Mhm.
Okay.
And I'm going to guess these are not covered by insurance.
No, don't we wish, right?
Right.
Because
Yeah.
insurance is really, I lived in that world for a long time, and it's really sick care. It's not well care. And the analogy I love to use when I talk about, we moved outside of the insurance model. I tried really hard to do this in the insurance model, and insurance companies really don't reimburse for this. So if you think about, you have car insurance, right? For the accident, for, catastrophic events, but you still have to do car maintenance. You still have to fill it with gas. You still have to do oil changes, all of that. So really shifting that mentality. It would be nice if health insurance paid for all of that maintenance, and really it probably should, but health insurance pays for that surgery, that ER visit, that catastrophic event, but it doesn't really want to cover wellness.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
if a woman is wanting to look into these not alternative, but more
Additional.
less traditional and additional, where can they find them? Do they go to NAMS on the website? Where can they look?
Great question. So both the Oshot and Cliovana have their own websites. I believe it's, cliovana.com, Oshot. And within those, you can find a provider in your area. So I'm listed in my area for the Oshot. I'm listed in my area for the Cliovana. So depending on where you are, put in your zip code and you'll find providers that are trained in this.
And
Okay.
if you're in Plymouth, Massachusetts, you don't need to look any further because
Yeah,
Dr. Arena's right
there-
there. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much for spending time with us and talking to us about all this information. We always say to the listeners, knowledge is power. And the more they know, the less they feel alone and misunderstood by a lot of their doctors. So thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so grateful.